Okay.
Welcome. It is so nice to have you.
Thank you.
It's very nice to be here.
Would you like to start with some questions? Say a few words. It's all yours.
I would just like to say I'm thrilled that you're all here. I really, a lot of people that do these kinds of things, I've been doing them for a long, long time, get very bored and very tired of it. You know what? I'm just the opposite. I love talking to people, and I love getting to know, and certainly here, it's my hometown, guys, That's the reason I love it. I was born in Charleroi, PA, and lived in Smithton, and spent a lot of time in Pittsburgh. I went to the Pittsburgh Playhouse, studied singing in Pittsburgh, and now I'm on the board at Point Park University.
Nice.
I love it here. It's a great city. Okay.
Want to get some questions in? Just raise your hand. We'll come around. Right down here.
I have a two-part question.
Yes.
First of all, do you still have family here?
No, unfortunately. I have a cousin that lives in West Newton, PA, and that's the only one I have left, unfortunately.
Yeah, I miss Willis and Joanne.
Yeah, well, so do I. Did you know Joanne?
Yes, very, very well.
Oh, she was my favorite cousin.
And the second part is, do you prefer Broadway, TV, or movies, and why?
It's hard to say. I love live performance, and I haven't done a lot of Broadway. I haven't. I've done now I'm doing a show all over the country with my son Patrick, and that's all live as well. And I did go back to Broadway with my son Patrick. We were the first time a mother and son ever appeared together in a Broadway musical, and we made Broadway history. And this is 1970 now, and I loved it. And I realized when I went back to the stage, you know what? This is great. Everybody gets to know each other. Everybody sees each other every day. Where in movies, yeah, I love making movies, but you're there, the movie's over, you never see them again. From that standpoint. In other words, I love doing both, but I'm thrilled that I've had the opportunity to do both.
Nice. Next question. Right there in the back.
Hi. Where do you keep your Oscar?
You go in my front door of my house, that's the first thing you see. You open the front door, and it's on a stand right in my living room. Just as you walk in the door, you see it's the first thing you see.
And over here.
Shirley, I doubt you remember this, but I'm from Indiana, PA, and you came up to the Jimmy Stewart Museum one time.
Yes,
for the
I
Barbie
did,
Awards.
absolutely.
Well, talk about your experience working with Jimmy Stewart.
Oh, I love Jimmy Stewart. I did 2 films with Jimmy. And, he was from Indiana, as you say, and so we were like both in the same hometown, so to speak. He was just one of the best actors I ever worked with, and one of the best people I ever worked with. I adored him. We had a wonderful time together, and, he was a friend, and that's not easily done in Hollywood. He was just great. I loved him.
Down here.
If you would not have been an entertainer, what would your other career choice have been?
I still want to do it, and if I stop work, I'm too old now. My dream in life, I wanted to be a veterinarian. I adore animals. I'm an only child, and I raised everything from snakes to squirrels to birds to chickens. I had a little banty rooster that was my best friend that used to sit on my shoulder. And so that's really what I wanted to do. And actually, I was entered in college to become a vet. And I stopped off in New York City with my parents on a summer holiday, went to an audition, and I never got to college. So that's how that happened, yeah.
Question for you over here. How did you end up in Hollywood from a small town here in western Pennsylvania?
Well, as I said, I was going to become a veterinarian, and my parents took me to New York on a summer holiday to New York City. That was usually our holiday. We would drive from Pittsburgh to New York City and spend, a few days in the summer, because I'm an only child, and my mother always wanted me to go shopping with her, and guess what I wanted to do? I wanted to go to baseball games with my dad, which is what I did. Anyway, that's how it happened, and then As I said, I was entered college. I went to this audition in New York City. I knew the agent there and a pianist that I'd worked with at the Pittsburgh Playhouse. I went to the Pittsburgh Playhouse and studied there during the summers when I was in high school. And I sang for a casting director of Rodgers and Hammerstein. And 3 weeks later, I was in my first Broadway show called South Pacific.
Question for you over here.
Ms. Jones, again, welcome. We're so happy to have you back. Do you have a particular memory that stands out for you, either before or during your career?
A career, during my career, before...
A particular memory, either prior to your introduction to Hollywood or during your career during Hollywood?
Well, you know, the memory I just talked about, I mean, it was a very strange thing for a young girl of 17 to go to a very first audition and didn't even know who I was singing for. And it was Rodgers and Hammerstein. So, I mean, that was an incredible thing that happened. And I'm not even sure in today's time it would ever happen again. You know, I sang for the casting director. He called in Rodgers to hear me personally, who called Oscar Hammerstein at home to have him come and hear me personally. And, you know, I was 17 and on my way to college. And I don't think that's ever been done since. And 3 weeks later, I was in my first Broadway show, and 3 months later, I was in Nogales, Arizona, playing the role of Laurie in the motion picture of Oklahoma. I mean, it's a remarkable story, because it's very unusual.
And just a sidetrack, you're doing a one-woman show now, is that right?
Well, it's not one, it is a one woman, but my son is also in the show. My son Patrick Cassidy has done 7 Broadway shows, and we work together a lot. Matter of fact, we came back to Broadway together. We did a Broadway show together. Was it 42nd Street? Yeah, I think so. My memory these days, I'm so sorry. Things just leave me these days. But anyway, yeah, and we have a show. As a matter of fact, my son Sean, who's a writer-producer now and doing very, very well, has written a show for Patrick and myself, and it's called Have You Met Miss Jones? And we're starting rehearsals on that, and we're going to have a young Shirley Jones and a young Jack Cassidy doing some of the singing, and I'm going to tell the complete story of my whole life, from the beginning to the end.
Excellent.
I have a question for you back here.
Shirley, of course, my favorite movie you were in was Carousel.
Oh, I love that score. It was beautiful music.
The only movie I didn't think you were suited for was Elmer Gantry.
Oh, yeah? How about the Academy Award?
How were those 2 leading men, Gordon McRae and Burt Lancaster?
Oh,
describe them.
sensational. Well, you know, Gordon, I was in love with as a teenager. There was on Saturday morning, there was a show called the Teen Timers Club on the radio. And every Saturday morning, I would tune in to hear this incredible voice. Gordon McRae was singing on it. And then to be cast opposite him, you know, I mean, I was in heaven. To me, he had the most beautiful voice of all time. There's never been anybody like him. But Burt Lancaster was the best kisser I ever had on the screen.
And a question over here.
You've done so many things that everybody knows so much about. You know, I grew up on Partridge Family, and
Right.
and Nora was watching Music Man on the way up here. You know, so
That's great.
because you've done so many things. But if you could look back, and I hope you're not stretching too much of your memory here, of the things that you've done that maybe not as well focused on, maybe not as well known, that you're the most proud of, that you would like to say, you know, I wish people would look at that performance as well, what would it be?
Oh, let me think at this time. Well, let's see. I did several movies. I did a couple with Glenn Ford that I loved, you know, working on, and I thought should have been seen more. It's hard for me to remember names right now, but I loved working with Glenn, and the movie was wonderful. And Danny Bonaducci was in it too, and I can't think of the name of it right now. Let me see what else. I did I did some, I auditioned for the thing that Debbie Reynolds did, the famous movie that she did. No, the one on the boat where she rescued everybody. What was it?
Incredible Molly Brown. Unsinkable.
What? Molly Brown. Yeah, Molly Brown. Yeah. I auditioned for Molly Brown, and I wanted that part so bad, and guess who got it? Debbie. You know. So from that standpoint, yes, I envied her. That was a great role, and she was great in it. I mean, let's face it. So yeah, there were things like that. But you know, I haven't had a lot of disappointments in those areas. I have to say, I'm very grateful because I've had a lot of wonderful things to do and wonderful acting jobs and wonderful scripts too. So.
And over there.
Great question here.
Hi. One of my favorite movies of all time is Tank, and a lot of people don't
Oh,
remember
yeah,
Tank.
yeah.
It's one of my favorite. And I just wonder if you had any stories from that about James Garner, because my mom was absolutely in love with him.
And so was I. I adore James Garner. You know, when I first came to Hollywood and actually was just cast in Oklahoma, but I was living in Hollywood, and I had a roommate, and there was a young press agent who wanted to help me out, you know, because I was brand new. He said, "Come on, I have a young guy here that I'm helping out too." He said, "We'll both go to dinner." It was James Garner. And I met him then, and he was just beginning when I was beginning at that time. And he didn't even have his first movie role yet. So I got to meet him there. And then when I got to work with him, you know, I was thrilled. He was a great guy, by the way, just a great guy and a wonderful actor.
Question for you right here.
Oh.
Shirley, a two-part question. The gentleman over here was saying about some roles that you may have wanted to get and you didn't get. Can you tell us a little bit about I think it was a 1979 series that started Shirley, and it lasted for like a season?
Yes, just one season, yeah.
Yeah, and then the second part of the question was, I understand Audrey Hepburn's voice was dubbed in My Fair Lady by a woman singing by the name of Marnie Nixon.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, just to dispel any rumors, your voice was never dubbed by.
No, my voice was never dubbed, No, you know, there were a lot of actresses like her that didn't sing, and Marnie was the singer. She was, I got to know Marnie quite well, and she sang for everybody in the movies, everybody, you know, and it's a wonderful person. I really enjoyed that, and I loved, what was the first question you asked me?
About Shirley.
Oh, about Shirley. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a series that I had called Shirley, and it was after. Yeah, it was after the part. Yeah, the timing element is hard for me now. It was right after the Partridge Family, as a matter of fact. And I was thrilled to have another series called Shirley. I mean, please. And it was. I thought it was charming and wonderful. It was a household family, you know, and we lived in this lovely little home and everything. And for some reason, the producer at that time, and I can't think of his name right now, decided, I probably shouldn't tell you this because it was not a nice thing I did, but I was in a restaurant with my husband, and I found out that he canceled the show after 1 year. And I wasn't told about it. Nobody told me that, because I thought it was doing well, you know. And he was sitting in the same restaurant where I was at that time. So I got up from my booth and I went over and I said, "Why'd you cancel our show and didn't even tell me about it?" And he said, "Because your show was too good and too nice. I wanted a much better show that had a murder in it and had this in it and that in it." Great. I could murder somebody.
Good question for you right over here.
What was your favorite role?
My favorite role? Well, in the musicals, I think it was the Music Man playing the lead in the Music Man for the musicals. But of course, Elmer Gantry was the role that got me the career that I've had, because it put me in another place instead of just being a musical person, you know. People said, well, maybe she can act too, you know, that kind of thing. I never could understand if you were in musicals, they didn't consider you an actress. You know, you had to do something else. But yes, it was The Music Man. I loved it a lot.
Question right down here, or he'll get you next.
What's your fondest memory of the Partridge Family? Probably have a million of them, but is there anything in particular that sticks out in your mind?
Oh gosh, you know, the Partridge Family was a marvelous thing for me in many, many ways. You know, at that time, once again, I was told, you know, I turned down the Brady Bunch. I was offered that first. And I know. And she's a good friend of mine, by the way. But one of the reasons is, you know, all the agents and managers said, Shirley, don't do a television series, because if it is successful, your movie career will be finished. You know, that'll be the end. And also, when I read the Partridge Family, when I read the Brady Bunch, I thought, I don't want to be the mom taking the roast out of the oven. If I'm going to do a series, a television series, I want something that's a little different for me. And that's why the Partridge Family came up. And when I read the Partridge Family, I thought, wow, this is great. I'm not married anymore. I have a family. We all sing together. I drive a bus. I've never driven a bus in my life. And you know, and it was a whole different feeling for me. And I thought, this is going to be fun to do. And that's why I enjoyed it. And there were so many moments in it. I mean, it ran almost 5 years. And, you know, Danny Bonaducci was hysterical, which I loved. And, you know, and David, you know, David's my stepson. But I really got to know him as a person, truly and honestly, doing that show. I mean, he was wonderful in the show, and I was thrilled that he got. I have to tell you how this happened. I was the first one cast in the Partridge Family, and then they started casting the children, you know. And I would usually have to go and do a scene with one of the kids that they were trying to, you know, test. And I came on the set, and David was standing there. And one of the producers had asked me earlier, you know, how do you feel about your stepson, David Cassidy? And I said, why? And they said, well, we're thinking about him, you know, for the role in the show. And I said, well, he's wonderful. I think he'd be wonderful. I said, yeah, it's a great idea. Well, he didn't know, even then, that I was cast, right? And I walked on the set. He was standing there. And I went up to him and I said, hi. He looked at me and he said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm your mama. So that's how that happened, but it was great.
I have a quick question. The Partridge Family was based on a real-life rock group called the Cowsills.
That's right.
Have the Cowsills ever met anyone in the Partridge Family?
Oh yeah, all of us, yeah. Matter of fact, I had dinner with them and lunch with them, you know, around that time. You know, they're lovely people, just lovely people. And they were very excited about the Partridge Family. They really were. But it was the Cowsills, yeah.
Nice. And a question.
We have someone right over here.
Okay.
Shirley, the big birthday ever. Well,
what was that?
I think he was wishing you a belated happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
We're big fans of the up-to-date album cover as well as all your other
Thank you. Shall I tell you how old I am? 82. That's a hard one.
Shirley, I have a question about your time with the Partridge Family. I know that, like, come the 80s and 90s, you were probably well on your way with separate projects. Was there ever talk of, like, getting back together again for, like, a reunion series, possibly even, like, a tour?
It was tried a lot. It was tried a lot. But, you know, most of the kids didn't want to do it. I mean, they were, you know, I thought it was a great idea, and I probably would have done it. But they didn't want to do it. I mean, I think David had it by then. And I know Susan Day was finished with it. I mean, she was finished. She went on. She was not happy with what transpired after the Partridge Family for her. So nobody wanted to do it.
I have a question for you right up front here.
Shirley, with The Music Man, can you share any of your favorite memories with Robert Preston, Little Ronnie Howard?
Oh, they were all wonderful, all wonderful. I was so thrilled to work with Robert Preston, you know. I had seen him on Broadway do the show, and he won the Tony Award on Broadway. For 3 years he played it. Now, Warner Brothers, I don't know whether you know this, Warner Brothers was doing the movie, and they were just about to cast Mr. Frank Sinatra to play Harold Hill. And Meredith Willson flew to Warner Brothers And he said to Jack Warner, unless you use Robert Preston, you don't do my show. And I was thrilled. I mean, I'd worked with Frank, and I knew Frank, but as I said, I had seen Preston on Broadway, and I thought, oh, I'm so excited. I couldn't wait to work with him. And he was wonderful. It was like he was doing it for the first time. What a great guy and so talented.
A question in the back here?
So how much of a change of pace was it going from your more traditional roles to your more recent roles, like in as Grace in Grandma's Boy or in
Boy.
Zombie
You
Night?
seen Grandma's Boy? I love doing Grandma's Boy. No, the fact of the matter is, you know, when you're an actress, you know, you want to play all different kinds of roles. I'm not saying that you want to jump in and out of bed with everybody you see. I'm not talking about that. But, you know, acting comes in many different ways. And I hadn't done a role like that for a long time. And when they came up with it, I said, wow, yeah, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I had more fun because everybody in it was so good, you know. And it was Adam Sandler's company that produced it. And all of the director, the producers, the guys that I worked with were so talented and so together and so right on about what they wanted, you know. I had a great time. I loved every minute, and I loved the role.
I have a question right here.
In not that long ago, you reprised the role of Shirley Partridge on That 70s Show. I was wondering, how did it feel to put that skin on again?
It was fun. I loved it, yeah. I mean, you know, I have great memories, and, you know, and in many ways, to tell you the truth, I really am Shirley Partridge. I mean, you know, I have 3 sons and 11 grandchildren, and my family, my children have always been the most important thing in my life. So, in many ways, I was Shirley Partridge.
One more question.
We've got time for a few more. You good with a few more questions?
Did you have to study the script? Like, how did you, like in the movies, do you have to memorize everything?
Oh, yes, you have to memorize everything. Yeah, you do, yeah, yeah, but, you know, in the movies, the wonderful thing about it, you would memorize the lines, and usually, you know, I would have, certainly when I got older, when I was young, I could memorize it in 2 seconds, but now, even at the age I am now, I have somebody come in and read with me. And by reading with somebody, you get to know the answer, you get to know the question, you get to know and it's much easier to learn it that way.
Time for a few more questions. It's like 2 more.
Do you have any particular piece of music that you don't tire of singing? That you can just sing?
If I loved you, then again I would try to say all I'd want you to know. I love that one.
And one more question, and we'll call it. Right over here. Over there? Wherever you want. We'll do both. We'll do both.
Who's that?
Right there, right there. And thank you for the song.
Okay, so in your autobiography, in the first printing, there's a certain story concerning Joan Collins. How true is it?
It's true. I shouldn't say that, but it's true. She's not happy with me about that, but that's true. I know
Can we
she's
get the
not
story?
happy.
Is it possible to get the story?
No, read the book.
All right. I'll read the book. And let's just get one more question before she heads back to her table, and right here.
Right here.
She'll be signing, and there'll be the photographs as well.
The shows that you're doing on stage, will you be bringing any of them to the Pittsburgh area?
I'm hoping to, yes, by all means. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, yeah. Paul Hennigan, whom I'm having dinner with this Sunday night, he's with the, you know, runs, they're building a new Pittsburgh Playhouse, you know, downtown, and he's helping get that all done, and he's the head of Point Park University, and a very good friend of mine, and he's going to bring me to Pittsburgh when we do this show.
Well, we can't wait. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, Shirley Jones. Yeah, thank you. You guys can do better than that one. Come on. Shirley heading back to her table for autograph.